You guys aren't going to believe this, but you remember when I talked about Dying Light 2 and I was having a lot of trouble with my coffee maker? Well, turns out it works now. Yeah, I don't know how, but I walked away for a few days. I decided to just let the coffee thing do its thing, and well, here we are, and I'm about to make myself a cup. What I wanted to say was, I'm sorry for my negative attitude at the beginning of that video. I know it was pretty obvious that I seemed a little hot-headed. It's just this coffee make. What? Look! What is this? Why is this happening? What do you want? Why are you here? Can you stop doing that? I don't like that you're doing that. You're gonna hurt somebody or yourself. God, I guess if you ever wanted to know what the fuck it's like to be a little pest in someone's house or something, then yeah, you'd hang out with whoever the fuck that was. Or, if you're a horror game enthusiast like myself, you can check out Little Nightmares, which is today's game, and very similar to what just happened to me. So, let's get into it.
Yes, it's years old by now, and I've long outgrown the overall concept, but Little Nightmares was a pretty special game back in the day. Released back in 2017, Little Nightmares was a narratively driven horror platformer where the player takes control of Six, a young girl in a yellow raincoat. Stranded in what seems like the end times, you are forced to endure the rocky, dangerous, monstrous world as you navigate the massive boat encompassing what little is left of humankind. With a powerful idea such as this, it translates into the video game world seamlessly, and it's still an impressive addition to my library. In my teenhood, I played the shit out of it and eventually beat it with nothing but questions to ask and a bunch of sequels that I've unfortunately never played. No shit, Little Nightmares was popular enough to spawn not one, but two sequels. Little Nightmares 3 is confirmed to release soon as of this year, so eventually I'll have to play the second game to catch myself up. But back then, it was different. It felt like a brand new generational mold had set itself in the place of other horror games at the time. Sure, you had big explosions like Resident Evil 7's massive launch or even Outlast 2, but you also had some really great smaller fireworks beneath those explosions that stood out to a lot of people, like Friday the 13th or Bendy and the Ink Machine. Unlike those titles, Little Nightmares stood out the most to me with its vague yet very deep and disturbing lore. Its darkened, nightmarish atmosphere filled to the brim with tricks and traps as you slowly rock back and forth on this desolate mission to escape. There's not a line of dialogue anywhere in the game. I was blown away considering how most horror games have to give you a large text screen just to catch you up, or they show it all in the first cutscene. Little Nightmares barely has grunts. The closest thing I can think of is whenever you get caught by something and you hear a loud screech noise as the music amps up. It not only proves to be beneficial when selling the scare of the experience, but it provides you with multiple answers to your problem. Is one pathway not working? Try another. Keep getting caught in the same room? Look around, cause a distraction. The freedom to approach the objective while still feeling limited was excellently designed here. I've never questioned it. Little Nightmares is a treasure trove of fuckery, and I'm excited to dive into it and expand further on what makes it an excellent horror game, especially considering the approach. So let's stop shitting in our hands and start throwing it at the monkey. You take control of Six, who, during the course of the journey, is surrounded by a cloud of mystery. Why are we here? Who are we? Who are the inhabitants of this massive boat? Although the story's plot isn't spelled out in a specific way, it has an interesting narrative that drives itself into your mind the further you progress. And, much like art itself, I guess you could say the game is open to interpretation. As I said, bare bones, it's a puzzle platformer. You're not necessarily allowed to fight back against the enemies of this game, as the goal is to distract them and sneak around rather than directly confront them. The perspective is quite impressive, and the details of each and every section in the game are immaculate. One thing I've always said about Little Nightmares was its beautiful design. Even for 2017, this is a great looking game, and the artists went hog wild on environmental storytelling. It's been a good chunk of time since I've played Little Big Planet, but this game reminds me of it with its camera controls and side-scrolling 3D gameplay perspective. In my opinion, this really adds to the tension overall. It's one of those underrated gems where you don't need an explanation nor an introduction. Visually, the story is told to us in a unique way, with sections of the boat dedicated to one or two boss-type enemies that Six will have to work around using puzzle solving and her toothpick legs. There's a big list of things I want to talk about today, but let's start from the beginning in order to find out what makes Little Nightmares so special even today. The game starts with you waking up in a suitcase. As far as symbolical messages go, I'll leave this one up to you. If you press F, 6 will bring out a flip lighter that will help to light your way for a brief distance. It's intended to help you see things that you might not know are there, and can even help you track down collectibles. The environment is always hiding something within, so taking an extra minute or two to look around never hurt anybody. The collectibles come in these weird forms, but it feels good to discover them. The little gnome creatures that run around when they see you are to be chased after, followed by a supportive hug of friendship. I have no clue what this does besides unlock an achievement, but it's wholesome to see something as vibrant and human still represent some emotion in this dreary, dead world. Scattered on the boat are oil lamps and other wick-based things that can be lit using the lighter. Again, I'm not too sure if this does anything besides allow you to 100% the game. As far to my knowledge, the game doesn't give you any rewards upon completion. That's fine though, nobody said it had to reward you with all the bells and whistles. Thankfully, the story is long and interesting enough for a dissection of its artistic take on the horror gaming genre. I find it a bit hard to think the sequels are any better than the first, but it's unfair to judge them without playing them myself, so those will have to wait. You can interact with various props in the environment. Most of the trash and junk isn't important, but I find it neat they allowed physics to be used in this way. You really need to do a lot of clever thinking and keep a sharp eye out for anything useful. Other collectibles include this strange ceramic figurine of what appears to be a lady dressed in a robe or something. You pick these up and shatter them, which is satisfying. The first threat you encounter are a bunch of bloodthirsty leeches that hang from the ceiling and fall down on your head. That concept alone sounds terrifying, but if you're quick and react accordingly, you'll avoid them easily enough. It's pretty silly. These things are nothing compared to what you'll have to face later on. And by later on, I mean a few minutes afterwards. You're soon introduced to the first nightmarish creature of this bleak world. The janitor. He's a very menacing introduction to what is otherwise a menacing horror show. He can't see, but he can locate Six's location by listening close for her footsteps. Utilizing this method will prove to be your greatest challenge as you sneak past him and avoid becoming one of his insanely weird collectible dolls. It's not spelled out, but I think he was responsible for capturing loose children and imprisoning them until he later transforms them into nothing more than a sculpture. Disturbing and fucked up as that is, you then have to dig through trenches of abandoned shoes from an invisible threat, only to distract the janitor afterwards using audible toys and ceramic jars. Man, the creature designs are awfully creepy. I was freaked out the first time I tried this game, but it has a great balance of being extremely scary one minute to super wholesome another. Often in these areas you can find a hidden place that offers a breath of fresh air, and maybe even a hug from a lost gnome to help you feel human some more. Unfortunately, not to any sort of detriment to the game's quality, the scenery is gothic and dark. Even in these rest areas, you're forced to see some brutal imagery aside from when you're directly pursuing the exit to this goddamn place. It's so miserable watching these children hang their heads in despair knowing that there's no point in struggling. The player is only left to speculate why they're being punished in this inhumane, disgusting way. But the story is so interesting and captivating, it continues to add to that web of mystery. Throughout the game, there's a constant theme of hunger coming up. Six, at scripted moments, will hear her stomach gurgle and hunch over in pain. Dying of hunger, you have a small amount of time to eat. The second time you become hungry, the janitor kidnaps you. The third time, you eat a rat that's stuck in a trap. And then a gnome offers a sausage later on, just to be mutilated by Six. The first viewing of that cutscene was super shocking. Well, what does it all mean? My caveman brain is a little too crooked to work out the kinks, however, I do know some of the achievements relate Six to being a yellow canary, or a bird free from its cage. Could it be interpreted that as you are exposed to further darkness within the maw, you lose your innocence and humanity gradually, until at the end, you no longer resemble a yellow bird, but a dark raven possessing the literal afterlife? I don't fucking know. Let's move on. Soon enough, you'll outrun the janitor, but his long arms continue to pursue. Trapped, your only option here is to pull the cage support beams, which drop the door on his fucking arms, severing them. What's gross is the fact that they still wiggle and try to grab Six after being separated. We can only speculate as to what the janitor planned to do with us. He's not alone in nefarious schemes, as the twin chefs are yet another disturbing factor at play. These fat, gelatinous blobs wander around the kitchen aimlessly adjusting their awful meals. It's really hard to sneak by them here. Oh fuck, oh fuck! Whew, huh. Thought I was a goner there. And I got an achievement? That's pretty cool. There are tons of different ways to get around these massive discrepancies, such as smashing glass or activating a noisy device to mask your presence. The goal in most of these places is to learn the environment, its traps, its hiding places, so on and so forth. Distracting the bosses will give you that bit of leeway to escape and move on for good. And I know I loosely commented on it before, but I love how this game presents itself. It's an artistic vision gone awry, a nightmare within a daydream, a beautiful tragedy. Every screenshot of any waking moment could serve as an excellent wallpaper and perfect representation of the game itself. It's like if Dr. Seuss were depressed and wrote adult books rather than children's. Outwitting the chefs isn't hard, but escaping them is another story. You'll have to turn on the power to the meat hook line in order to climb the giant stack of dirty dishes and escape in a really cool cinematic way. Stuff like this is why I really appreciate Little Nightmares. The environment itself is an obstacle that you'll have to solve while avoiding the legitimate threat. You're so much smaller than everything else, and this could be interpreted as many things. However, I'd like to speculate it's because children aren't very common anymore. During the course of the game, we see kids locked away in cages or even corpses from time to time. What happened to all of the adults, and why are the children essentially being harvested and starved for the duration of their lives? And if we're to presume that Six herself is a child, how come she survived when no one else could? There's a touching scene when Six is hungry earlier on. A child tosses their only food through the bars so that the player can keep going, despite the child no longer being able to eat. In this gloomy, fucked up place, even the children have given up hope. It's very uneasy seeing how twisted and warped the world is with the bulbous and gangly villains we're trapped with in this world. Moving on from the kitchen, Six enters the guest area. By Jove, the cinematography in this game is peak. It reminds me of old school God of War mixed with Little Big Planet. There's so much going on, yet the player is able to bask in every detail, and they still feel like they're in control. The guest area is even more haunting and ridiculous than other areas of the game. Oh! Jesus, did you see that? I got crushed by that guy's table.
I'm in awe of you.
It's all about the timing, and with this game, you'll find yourself enduring some trial and error, but it's magnificently designed where you don't feel like a complete fucking moron after being stuck in a certain area for a set amount of time. The only real complaint I have is with the Steam port itself, or I guess I should say the PC port. Playing on mouse and keyboard is fucked up, and I played the entire game like this. I highly recommend you go through the trouble of finding your controller and plugging it in, because the controls on keyboard are a little clumsy feeling. You just can't move as accurately nor as fluently as you can on a controller. Look at this fucking place. There's a stampede of humans chasing after me. Is this a goddamn joke? I find it very interesting that, despite being surrounded by the only good-looking edible food we've seen in the entire game, the guests have a conniption upon discovering Six within their presence. They fucking fall over and flop on top of themselves to try and eat you alive. It's terrifying. There's an epic runaway segment here that I'd relate to the one from Outlast, right before you meet Richard Traeger. Six finally breaks free from the clutches of gluttony, only to then be introduced to the darkest chapter yet, both literally and figuratively, the woman's quarters. Earlier on in the game, you can see this strange woman as she watches people pour inside the maw like ants. I suppose this is to indicate that, despite all of the mysteries we've encountered, She is the center of it all, if not the ruler of this cursed ship. Now we're inside her personal dorm. It seems easy enough until you have to sneak past her and shatter a vase to reveal a key. She disappears, only to come back and ambush you a bit later. Her boss fight might be seen as a bit underwhelming by others, but I disagree, and I'll explain why. The all-seeing eye is placed everywhere in the game, often shown in plain sight to, perhaps, symbolize the player being observed at all times. The mirrors inside the dorm are smashed, a clever foreshadowing to the final fight, but an otherwise brilliant message if one were to dissect it completely. The woman is the only normal-looking character in this world besides Six, but she hides her face behind a ceramic mask. This further reduces the humanity that's left within the universe of Little Nightmares, especially considering she is tied with some kind of darker force. The final fight is really intriguing to me. Six finds one perfectly intact mirror left in this weird place, and must use it to reflect back at the woman. Unable to bear the sight of herself, the woman will eventually break her mask and fall to the floor. Weakened and most certainly twisted by the dark force that possesses all living things in this world eventually, Six approaches the woman and bites her neck, killing her and absorbing her power. As she walks out of the maw, guests will try to grab and eat you, but only end up falling dead with their literal souls being sucked from their fucking faces. Jesus, that's gotta be downright awful, but it really keeps my adrenaline and thoughts pumping at the same time. Never has an indie game of this magnitude had such an impact on me as when I first played it, and like I said, even today, it's still good. That's pretty much the end, not counting the DLC that I currently don't own. However, there's a neat cutscene after the credits that shows Six on an island with a thank you message to the player. What a powerhouse of an experience. Little Nightmares has that really unique effect on me where no matter how old I get, I always revisit it because it's so much fun. It might not be the scariest game today, but it's creepy and effective. This is a game that will live on through horror game history as a groundbreaking artistic storyline with gameplay so simple yet so satisfying. Sometimes little lost things find their way home. And if you don't currently have this little lost thing in your home, I suggest you get it. And soon, I plan to cover the sequel with some more analysis and gameplay, which I'm very excited for. I'm super excited to see where the storyline goes from here, and if they ever explain what the Maw was. Hope you guys are doing great, and thank you so much for watching this video. I just really wanted to talk about Little Nightmares because it is one of my favorite indie games of all time. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.